It's about 3:25 p.m. on Wednesday, September 10th, 2025, and Charlie Kirk was shot and killed today. He was speaking outside at a Turning Points USA event at a college in Utah, outdoors with a huge crowd. Police initially had one suspect in custody. That was not the shooter. The school has reported that the shooter was in a building 200 yards away across the area where Charlie was speaking. That indicates a trained sniper to some degree to me, using a high powered rifle. And I'm seeing a lot of posts about gun violence today because there was also a school shooting in Colorado, and I think 3 high school students were shot that are currently fighting for their lives in a hospital. And I've just been thinking that what happened to Charlie Kirk today, I think the term gun violence is inaccurate. He was assassinated today. This was political violence. Charlie Kirk was assassinated because of his political beliefs. This was not a random act. He was targeted. There was planning that went into this. And again, I don't condone violence. I don't condone what happened to Charlie Kirk today. But he was assassinated because of his political beliefs. There was nothing random about this. And it was because of the views that he has espoused. He has turned Turning Points USA into a very successful organization. Something like 80 million in annual revenues. They have 300 employees working for them with the stated goals of converting college-age American kids, converting them to his set of political beliefs, which at this point, I guess you could just accurately describe as Trumpism. He was an openly racist man, despite professing his Christianity. He wanted the United States to be a white Christian nation. He was a white Christian nationalist. But he built his movement on racism on the backs of black people and women. He was extremely opposed to anything resembling a diversity, equity, or inclusion program. And I remember one time on his program, he said that if I get on a plane and I see that the pilot is black, he was worried whether or not the plane was going to crash, because he completely, I think intentionally, didn't understand DEI programs or how they worked. And it fit his political narrative and Trump's political narrative and MAGA's political narrative that DEI means hiring unqualified black and brown people or women or LGBTQ people, when there are more qualified white men who could have filled that role. That's not what DEI is, but that's what he told his audience it is. He had a social media following exceeding 85 million people. And, he also built his platform and his political beliefs on misogyny towards women. Big fan of trad wives. Recently told Taylor Swift that this was her chance to redeem herself by submitting to her husband when she gets married to one of the Kelsey brothers, and just staying home and supporting him and his career and pumping out babies. He didn't believe that women have any place in the military or in the workplace, that their place was to be married and stay at home and raise kids. And that young women who are heading into college should go into college solely to get their MRS degree, to get married, to find a husband, not to get an actual degree, but to go to college so that they could meet a man who will have a college degree, who can then support them when they stay home and take care of the house and support him and raise babies, and so that they can submit to their husbands. He built his platform and his movement and his political beliefs on overt bigotry against immigrants of all kinds. He was a huge supporter of Donald Trump's immigration policies and masked anonymous ICE agents, snatching people off the streets, arresting people who are not criminals at all. They were simply brown. And he did not want brown people in his United States of America. And so he was a big supporter of Trump's immigration policies. And that brings us to his homophobia and his transphobia. He was answering a question about trans mass shooters when he was shot. And a distinction was trying to be made, and he said something along the lines of, well, are we including gang violence? And those were his last words. And by gang violence, he meant black people. And right after he said the phrase gang violence, he was shot in the neck. And he was virulently homophobic and transphobic. And so this was not just gun violence. This was political violence. And that's a scary thing. That's a very scary thing. I've had multiple conversations with multiple friends of mine over the last few weeks. And the consensus among all of us is that we're an authoritarian nation. We're a fascist government. Authoritarianism, fascism are not nonviolent movements. They're just not. And this was politically motivated violence in response to authoritarianism and fascism. Does that make it right? No, it doesn't make it right. But I think that additional context is crucial, rather than just saying this was just gun violence. This was political violence. And this ushers us into a new phase, I think. He was very high profile, and he was assassinated for his political beliefs. And then it's like you get into questions of, when you make your living and build a movement, a nationwide movement based on subjugating or removing from this country entirely black and brown people, the LGBTQ community, all immigrants. When you build your political movement on the subjugation of women and removing any and all freedom and autonomy that they may have, when you build your movement on these things and espouse these things on a daily basis, at what point do those words become violence? They're part of authoritarianism and fascism, which are violent movements. They are not nonviolent movements. And what is self-defense in that context? What is self-defense? When you're in an authoritarian fascist country that either wants to remove you physically from the country or take away all of your rights, take away all of your bodily autonomy, with a Supreme Court that has just legalized racial profiling for law enforcement that are wearing masks and no badges and snatching people off the street. What is self-defense in that context? And for whom is self-defense available? Can words themselves constitute violence? This was not just gun violence. This was political violence. And I'm afraid of the doors that it opens.